Hi, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I am Professor Rosenblum, and I'm going to be your Psych 132 perception teacher this quarter. Hope you folks are hanging in there, and I do hope that this is the last remote course you ever have to take, or at least are forced to take like this. Maybe you'll want to take remote classes. I know that I prefer teaching in person. I prefer seeing your smiling faces and actually, being in the same room with people. So I'm hoping this is it, and come winter quarter, we're all going to be back. I know we're on hybrid right now. Actually, I have to teach a course immediately after this in person. That will be quite a shift. But anyway, I hope you're hanging in there and things are getting better for you. We'll try to make the course as enjoyable and as distracting from the rest of your life as possible. I hope you enjoy it. Anyway, okay, so what we'll do is we will start off by talking a little bit about the logistics of the course, what's going to be required, what the course format is like. And as I said, the downside is we're having to do this remote. The upside is that because it's a remote class still, it is designed to really make it as flexible for you as possible. And we'll talk about the different ways the course is going to be flexible for you in terms of the exams and in terms of the lectures and all that sort of stuff. Right now, you probably noticed that the lecture is being recorded. It will be posted on YouTube probably sometime tomorrow. So the lectures will be posted the day after I give a live lecture. I am going to recommend that you come to the live lecture whenever you can. I think there's very clear research that it does make a difference. So I really recommend you do that. People who do attend live lectures in remote settings like this do better than those that watch the recorded lectures. But I am recording to make it more convenient for you. Okay, so let's go ahead and start talking about some of the details of the course. And then we will take a break and see what questions you might have. All right. So, all right. So there's all that kind of detailed information. We're going to do office hours for me by appointment. We can set up an appointment. We can do it live. We're allowed to do this now. So you can come to my actual office where I am currently, or we can do it via Zoom if you want. But I'm going to ask that all your questions, because it's a large class, all your questions first go to your TAs, and you will be meeting your TAs on Wednesday, I believe, is our first sections. So you get to know them a little bit. That's all will be done through Zoom as well, as you probably know, but you'll get to know them a little bit. So first contact them with your questions, and then if they can't answer your questions, they can forward the question to me or ask you to contact me directly. Our syllabus is available on iLearn, and we are using iLearn this quarter. The university has been encouraging the faculty to switch to Canvas, and I will be doing that next quarter, but this is an iLearn quarter, your last iLearn quarter probably for many classes. It will work fine for what we want to do, and because there still are a lot of technical aspects to the course, I felt more comfortable sticking in iLearn. As you'll see, the exams will be presented via iLearn. There is no required text for the course, which I'm sure you're happy about. But as you'll find out pretty quickly, the lectures and discussion sections are very full of conceptual material. And so it's really important that you spend time studying the lecture material, going back and watching the videos, that sort of thing. And ask questions in your discussion section if you have them about the conceptual material. So it might seem like it's going to be a really easy course because there's no textbook, but I want you to certainly prepare for probably more conceptual material than you've had in most other psychology courses. Okay, we'll be talking about philosophy, we'll be talking about theory. So it is going to be, you're gonna have to take some time and make sure you understand the concepts. I will be putting an optional collection of readings on reserve in Rivera Library. And the reason is, some of you might actually feel comfortable using readings to help you understand the concepts. That's perfectly fine. I will say that some of the readings are going to be more technical than they need to be for your understanding. I don't want you to be intimidated. You would never be tested on something in the readings that isn't covered either in section or in the lecture. But I understand some of you might prefer to have something to refer to. Basically, some of the readings are what I derive my lectures from. So it is going to be probably more technical than you need to know. Add drop. I cannot do anything about that. Sadly, they don't trust us, faculty, to do that sort of thing. That's going to be have to be done by your friendly psychology student advisors. I believe they are still meeting with students remotely, so you can email them. They're not going to be in their offices, so you'll have to contact them and set up a meeting through Zoom or take care of it through email if you want to add or drop. We can't do that. I can't do that. The TAs can't do that. Okay, let's talk about the course requirements. It's very straightforward, and this is one of the ways you will benefit from being a Zoom class, as you'll see. There are 3 multiple choice exams, each about 50 questions. They will be roughly each a third of your grade, and this will be the only thing that derives your grade are these 3 exams. Why I say roughly 33% is because there might be more, a couple more questions on some exams than other exams, but it will be 50 plus or minus 2 questions on each of the exams. As I've stated, the exam questions are based on lecture material and discussion material. And there will be certainly questions on the exam derived from discussion material that is not covered in lecture. So you are completely responsible for all of that material that is discussed in your sections. The TAs will be coordinating to make sure they cover the same critical material. So we will be able to ask everybody the same questions from section. Section is not optional. It's important. Our wonderful TAs are preparing some really nice discussions and demonstrations for you. And so they're putting time into it. It's important you go and you'll, in a 10-week course, I wish I could cover perception in a 15-week course, but there's so much now to this field, as you're going to see. It's really important that we use the discussion section times to present important material that I won't have time to discuss in the lectures. So yes, you will absolutely be tested on that as well. Okay, 50 multiple choice questions. They are not cumulative exams. So there will be an exam during final week, but that is not a quote final exam in that it is cumulative and testing everything from the beginning of the quarter. Instead, the first exam will test about the first third of the quarter's material. The second exam will test the second third exam the third. So it will just be on the material since your previous exam. Okay, now here's where you luck out. Rather than monitoring the test taking, you are going to be able to take your exam open book. Okay, so that means probably the way we'll do it is that you will have 80 minutes to, so the class time, the normal class time, to take the exam. And there'll be 50 questions, and so you will have some time to look up some answers you don't know. That being said, I promise you, you will not be able to pass the course if you don't study before the exams. I see people are raising their hand, and I will be answering questions in just a second. There's just no way you'd be able to answer all the questions by looking each of them up. That's just going to be impossible. It's very important you study, and we will be talking about studying strategies because, again, as I said, this is a little bit of a different course than a lot of psychology courses you've taken. It's not going to be possible for you just to memorize information. You're going to have to truly understand it. We'll talk about different strategies to do that. But you're going to have your notes available to you, the slides available to you while you're taking the exam, the videos, I suppose, but you're certainly not going to have time to scroll through the videos during that exam period. Okay. Another thing that's going to benefit you, ready for this, is that I will allow you to choose your 80-minute period when you feel ready to take the exam. So we do not have to all take the exam at the same time. Okay, I will set up a period of 2 or 3 days and say, okay, you need to take the exam between, say Friday and Sunday or Monday and Wednesday or something like that. I'll be very clear long before the exam approaches, and you can choose your 80-minute period. Once you start the 80-minute period, you have to finish. It's not like you can stop halfway through and say, well, boy, I didn't study enough, I better stop here and come back. Can't do that. It's got to be a straight 80-minute period, and the test is designed, the iLearn test process is designed to set it up that way. But you choose it. I've been using this since quarantine, and it's worked well. A lot of people do wait for the last hour and a half that the test is available because they want to study, and that's fine. But whatever it's convenient for you. I know you have other things going on. You have other remote classes, you have other in-person classes and all that sort of stuff. So I want to give you that flexibility. The first and second exam will be held roughly around week 4 and week 8, more or less. I'll be very clear as we approach. I'll give you at least a week's advance notice. And again, you will have a number of days to choose when you'd like to take the exam. The last exam, exam 3, will occur during finals week, and it will again be within a 2 or 3 day period. Again, an 80-minute exam timed. It'll be about 50 questions. That third exam, even though it's in finals week, will be no different in its format from the first and second exam. Finally, there's no extra credit. This is how we do this class. It's a big class, so we're going to do it as multiple choice exams. Trust me, we can learn a lot about how much you understand from multiple choice exams. Okay, one thing that it does not say on here that is going to help you again as a Zoom class, possibly one of the last Zoom classes required, is that I am actually going to give you some of the questions that are literally going to be on your exam. How am I going to do that? What we're going to do is, because it's Zoom and I know you need breaks and stuff like that, is not today, but starting on Tuesday's class, we will take a break from lecture every half hour or so, and I will give you a question for the exam. We will answer it together. You'll be select. I don't know if you've done the polling sort of thing on Zoom yet. It's very straightforward. You see a multiple choice question, you all answer. It has no bearing on your grade whatsoever. You answer the question, I give you a minute to do it. The whole class does it. We see how the class did, what answer they chose, and then we talk about the correct answer. I give you the correct answer, and we talk about why it's the correct answer. Each of those that I will be presenting, and it's going to be about 2 a class, will be questions on your exam that you'll have the answers to. So I don't know, what is that going to turn out to be? 6 questions or so on each exam you will have the answers to, because we went through those questions in class. Okay, that won't be today. That will be starting on Tuesday. Today's material is really very much introductory, so we won't be asking a lot of questions on that anyway. Okay. So I think that's all the details of how the course works. What I like to do now is stop my sharing and have you ask some questions. And let's see the best way to do that. I'm not going to use, well, I guess I could use chat and just not look at everything that came before it. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so you guys, some of these questions I imagine are to each other. So let's right now say, for the next minute, let's only put chat questions up if you want me to answer them. Hi, will we receive study guides? Yeah, no, you're not going to need a study guide for this class. The slides, because everything is from the lecture and the discussion section, you won't need a study guide. It will be, I'll tell you how to use the slides and the lectures to do that sort of thing. Oh boy, there's a lot of questions coming up. Let me make sure I'm following them all. Phoebe asks, will we have PowerPoints available to you? Yes, I believe they are available on iLearn. If they are not, I can do that right now. Could someone look to see if that's the case? I
It was just on there and they were not on there yet.
Okay, let's do that now. I apologize. I could have sworn I did that. All right, this is just going to take a second, everybody. Okay, now let me say this as I'm doing it. These slides are going to change because these are old slides from previous years, as you can imagine, and I've made some changes in today's slides a little bit. Lecture slides. Okay, well, on PSYC132 perception, I see a link that says lecture slides. I click on it, and oh, is that not available? Hold on just a second. No. Hold on. I click on lecture slides, and I see them. Is anyone else seeing the anyone on the left-hand tab all the way at the bottom? So you, Sarah, I see them. Okay, and make sure you can actually see the slides. Okay, I guess it is there. That's okay. It's a little confusing. Everyone is saying they're all available. Okay, good. I'm glad they're available. It is a little confusing, I understand. By open book, do you mean open note? Yes, I do. I mean open note, meaning that you can use all the notes. You can use anything you want during the exam. It's just easier this way. Sidra asks, will we be able to see all the questions on the exam at once? Absolutely. Oh, you are able to go back and forth. Yeah, I'm not one of those folks that just does one question and you're not allowed to go back. I always think that other questions on the exams can prompt answers to earlier questions, and I want you to all do very well. So yes, you will be able to go back and forth and all that sort of stuff. People are saying, they're posted. What is the date of the final exam? I don't know yet. I mean, what I guess I can do is I can say that it will probably be around when the exact time is scheduled. But again, you're going to have a 3-day period in which to choose your 80-minute slot to take the exam. Okay, what else? Erica asks, if each exam is worth 33, does that mean we will not receive credit points for discussion section? No, you will not be receiving points for attending discussion section. However, as I said, there is certainly going to be material presented in discussion section that will be on the exam. So it's really important you get the material from discussion section. Okay. Discussion assignments, Margaret asks. No, you won't be asked to prepare anything for discussion sections. I don't think. I mean, I'm giving each of the TAs a little bit of leeway. They can do a couple of things, but no, it has no, if there are assignments, if they ask you to bring something to discussion section one day, that would probably be the most of it. It would have no bearing. So you are not getting graded in your discussion sections. Will discussion sections be recorded? I am going to encourage the TAs to record their discussion sections. That being said, I am leaving it up to them. That is academic freedom. They are allowed to make that decision themselves. It's up to them. If they decide not to, and you'd like to talk to them about maybe sitting in another discussion section at 1 week, that would probably be okay. When you give us course, Brianna asks, when you give us course-related readings, will you tell us which book? There will not be course-related readings, Brianna. You're very lucky in this course. There are readings on reserve. This might be what confused you. There are readings on reserve, but those readings are very, very optional, meaning that most people never look at those readings. I just am aware that some people like things to read that might make it easier for them to understand the lecture. That being said, I cannot promise that these readings will necessarily make it easier. You're welcome to look at them. Some of the readings are because I derive the ideas myself and all that, that sort of thing. Some of the readings are more technical than what I'll be talking about. I don't want that to intimidate you. You'll never get asked a question from those readings, because some of them are very tough, that aren't covered in the lecture or discussion section. on the exam. So I want you to use those if you want, but I don't want you to be worried about them. I don't want you to be distracted by them. I don't want you to be intimidated by them. Okay, that's not going to go into the exam. Well, questions come straight from the slides, asked Dua. And the answer to that, the answer is a general yes, but you're always going to have to write down more than what's on the slides. The slides are going to present like, concepts, which I will then explain in words. So you will not be able to just study the slides, say, okay, I'll just look at the slides and I don't need to go to the lectures. There is no way you'd pass the course doing that. You need to look at the slides, understand what the terms are, and then write in your own words, take notes somewhere about what those terms, what those ideas mean, and how they relate to other things. So the questions do come from the slides and the discussion sections. But yes, the answer, the second part of that, it is certainly a combination of what I'll be saying and the slides, and that's generally the case for any lecture course that you're taking. Okay, other questions about the course? Take a couple of seconds here to see if people want to chime in. Sure, you'll have more as they come up. I'm going to leave chat for your enjoyment for the most part. When I take a break, I think maybe then we'll use chat just to direct questions at me. But in the meantime, you can use chat to make fun of me, to whatever you like to do in chat. I know students have really enjoyed chat during quarantine. Are we staying lecture today? Brianna asks. I think, am I going to lecture today? Yes. I want to keep you guys out of trouble. I'm just saying that because, hold on a second. I have my older son is currently in college and is doing exactly what you're doing right now. And right now he's doing it from home. And I know that, it's very easy to get distracted at home. So the reason I laughed about whether I'm going to lecture today is yes, just so you don't get distracted. We've got a lot to talk about. It will be fun. It will be an introductory lecture. It won't be anything too heady. Well, it's going to get a little heady later on, but that's okay. It'll be fun. Okay. Let's see. Oh, do I have pets? I do, and I always love to show them, but I am in my office now, and this is the first time I'm ever Zooming from my office because I prefer to do it from home. I've got a lot more there actually I can use as demonstrations and things. But I have to, right after this class at 11, run downstairs to the first floor of the psychology building and teach a 3-hour discussions, a 3-hour course. So I don't have my dog here. I can post a picture of my dog maybe later if you like, but oh yeah, I always loved showing the dog in class, and people, you're welcome to do that. Show whatever pets you want. I'm sure a lot of your friends in class will enjoy seeing. That's the one of the few real wonderful things about Zoom. We get to see each other's pets. Unfortunately, you won't get to see mine live. All right, let's see. Renee, is that how he pronounced it? Reminds me of I remind you of Jeff Goldblum. That's fine. Could be a lot worse. I've been called worse, that's for certain. All right, are you excited to teach in person again? Absolutely, Chelsea. There's certainly a convenience to rolling out of bed and rolling into the garage and teaching Zoom from the garage. There's no question. I live in LA, and that's nice too. I don't have to commute. But I think all of the faculty I've talked to really want to see students again. We really do. It's hard to just lecture to your computer. It really is. I mean, I can see your faces and all that, but it's so different. We really do want to get back into things, and it makes the whole job much more exciting. So the novelty of teaching from the garage has certainly worn off. I'm ready to go back. I wish it wasn't wearing masks. But I understand that has to be done right now for safety's sake. I miss seeing people's expressions. Some of you might know I actually do my own laboratory research is on lip reading. And I know how important that is. So I'm actually not looking forward to doing my 3-hour class with a mask on. In fact, for your amusement, I do have one of these just in case. Okay. I'm just glad that we'll be back in the same room again. All right. Anything else? Is it possible for those of us on campus to show up to see the lecture live? Unfortunately, not. The way this, I don't know if you heard the rules. The way it worked is the large classes are largely remote because of the rules that UC rules that the room has to have twice as many seats as there are students. Since this is what, 130-person class, there needs to be room on campus that seats 260 or whatever. And there are rooms on campus, just not that many, which means that most of these courses that are above 100 are being done remotely. There are some certainly that are being done live, but I'm not sure how they chose those. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm not allowed to lecture from a lecture hall in this course. I'm here in my office, but hey, we'll make it as fun as we can. All right, my G class, we can use my dorm room. I don't have a roommate. Okay, that's great. Well, this hopefully will be the last time. What I'm really hoping, and I've told every Zoom class, I've taught a lot of freshman courses in Zoom as well. Maybe some of you have taken PSYC132 with me. I taught all those Zoom-wise over the last few years. And I've told everybody this. After we're done with this, please stop by my office, or if you see me walking across campus, I would love to meet you in person after just getting to know you through Zoom. I mean, I feel like I'm cheated. I feel like you're cheated. Come over and say hi once we're back really in person and are safe and all that sort of thing. Will I have office hours in person once? So I absolutely, in fact, Phoebe, I'm not scheduling them, but I am happy as long as I'm on campus. And it looks like, just so you know, campus days for me are probably going to be Tuesday and Wednesday at least, Tuesday and Thursday at least, maybe Wednesday as well. Sometimes I will be happy to set up an in-person meeting if I am going to be on campus that day. If not, we can do Zoom and we can take all the time in the world that we want to if that's the case. Okay. All right. Well, do I know what classes I'll be teaching in the winter and spring? Sure. I'm teaching nothing in the winter. I like to give myself a quarter off from teaching so I can concentrate on research and travel for conferences and stuff like that. And in spring, I am teaching a graduate course that's not relevant to you, and then an undergraduate course, which is PSYC132, which is really made for non-majors, but I think it does count as an elective for psychology majors. I'm not sure of that. That's a really fun course, and if you're interested in this material, that gets really fun. Those of you that have taken it know that it's we do a lot of very fun and silly stuff in that course. All right, nothing in winter. All right, anything else? Anything else? All right, then let's start talking about perception. And we will take a little break to see if there's any questions about halfway through. It's not going to be a full lecture today, probably, just because we need to get back into the swing of things, but let's have some fun with this. All right, so share our screen again. There we go. Hopefully you can see that screen. And we are going to talk about the topic. Now, here is the deal about perception. And I know this, you can't hide it from me. This is not the course you wanted to take as soon as you became a psychology major. And I understand that probably when I was an undergraduate, it's not the course that I wanted to take as a psychology major either, at least not right off the bat. I know my son is a psychology major. He wants to be a psychologist, when he graduates, real psychologist, a clinical psychologist. I doubt perceptual psychology is his first choice in courses as well, even though his dad's a perceptual psychologist. Maybe that's why he doesn't want to take perceptual psychology. So I'm very aware of this. And my job here, I think, is to convince you that perceptual psychology is really cool. And it's gotten more cool since I started here at UCR. I've been teaching here for a very, very long time, 32 years. And I have to say that perceptual psychology has gotten more and more exciting since I started, just the whole field. For a number of reasons. Part of it does have to do with things that you've probably learned about in other courses, the technologies we use to understand the brain, which has just been so interesting. But more than that, I think we've become much more sophisticated at understanding how to test perceptual questions. We become much more kind of sensitive to how people behave based on how they perceive the world. And that's made not only the way we measure psychology using brain imaging, using different kind of laboratory methods, but how we ask the questions more lively, I think, more exciting. And that's wonderful. It makes it easier for me to teach and get people excited about it. But what I'm going to start with is a quotation that I've always really liked. And I think it's important for us to kind of consider this quotation, not only for perception, but for all of psychology. You've seen these sort of images before, and certainly we'll be talking about a few of them as we go through the course, where you're kind of made aware of your perception. You realize that you're seeing a face there that's made up of objects that are not really faces. There's two characters there, and these are fun. You see these in museums, you see these on your Instagram feeds and stuff. People find a cool illusion and post it. That's probably where you see the most of these now, I bet. Back when I was a kid, before we had any of this stuff, they were really popular to show on placemats to keep kids busy. There'd be illusions and things like that on paper placemats in diners and things like that. It's one of the ways I got interested in perception, diner placemats. So we are made aware of these sort of things, but for the most part, we really take perception for granted. And I think we take a lot of what we study in psychology for granted as well. And that's what this quote is about. And this is an old quote by James Gibson. There's James Gibson. We'll be talking about him in some detail in a few weeks. But this is his quote: psychology is a second-rate discipline. Now that's it. You're trying to become psychologist. You don't want to hear that. I think that he's going to explain this now in the rest of the quote. The main reason is that it does not stand in awe of its subject matter. Psychologists have too little respect for psychology. What does he mean by this? Well, I think this does, as I said, apply to perception. We'll be talking about it in that context mostly, but I think it also applies to the sort of psychology that lies behind the things that you may be most interested in. Oh, you know what I should do here? I'm going to make my image bigger so on the video it looks bigger. There we go. That's a lot of rose and bloom for my taste, but still, it will help on the recorded lectures. What he means by this is that we are doing things. We are behaving, right? Psychology is the study of behavior. We are thinking. We are reacting to things all the time without our conscious awareness of it. And that's a good thing. We don't want to be consciously aware of every step we take. We don't want to be consciously aware of every sound that's around us at all times, everything that's in our field of view. It'd be a very dangerous thing. We need to be able to attend to some things and ignore other things. But because of that fact, we are often not really, I guess, appreciative of how difficult these sorts of things are. When we started to design robots that we tried to get to perceive, we started really understanding, oh my gosh, these things that we do every day, these things animals do every day, walk around, outside without bumping into things, without getting hurt, being aware of things that might threaten us. I mean, those are not trivial things to solve from the perspective of computation or the perspective of robotics or anything like that. And what Gibson's saying is that as scientists, we need to step back from our own kind of introspective experience and appreciate what we're studying in the same way that biologists appreciate the biology of life, human forms, maybe. The cosmologists stands in awe of the universe and the Big Bang and all those great things. Physicists stand in awe of microscopic units of quarks and all that cool stuff. All those different scientists have an easier time, in a way, kind of standing in awe, being kind of, I don't know, overwhelmed by the complexity and the elegance of the things they're studying, where psychologists have a problem doing that because they have a problem not taking for granted the things that we are doing all the time, like simply walking, to our kitchens without getting hurt. It's a difficult thing to do. And part of what we need to do in this course is kind of acknowledge that these are difficult problems to solve, not only for us as animals, but for the scientists to understand. So part of what my goal here is to kind of put us in a position where we stand in awe. We kind of just are overwhelmed by the sophistication of these sorts of things. That's kind of my job. And especially when it comes to perception, which again is a course you didn't want to take, I've got to do that. So, we'll be working towards that as we go through our introduction to perceptual psychology. Sometimes we are, so we take these things for granted. Also, this is something, perception is something that you've probably thought of this, underlies all behavior in psychology. So all those fancy pants things that you learn in the other psychology courses, social psychology, personality psychology, abnormal psychology, all those fancy pants courses that you really want to take, you probably know that without our skills at perception, we wouldn't be able to, have a social life, a personality, abnormal reactions, which maybe we have to treat in therapy, those sort of things. That perception is the thing. It is what keeps us in touch with the outside world. So it's absolutely critical that we have some sense of how this occurs to know how we should then understand those fancy pants concepts of social psychology and personality psychology and abnormal psychology, all those things you want to take. Right? So whether we're talking about romance, I know my son cares much more about his romantic relationship than he does about perceptual psychology. And being an introspective kid, he certainly wants to understand how romantic relationships work in general. These are fascinating questions, right? But deep down underneath that, he needs to understand how people are, able to recognize each other. How do we able to recognize our significant other? Are there ways of recognizing our significant other that might be related to things other than vision, or maybe, seeing their face or recognizing their voice? Might we be able to recognize them based on their odor, things like that? These are all, perceptual questions. The answer, by the way, is yes, but we can talk about that later. What else? We'll talk a little bit about body language and imitation, and these are the sort of things that you would learn in a social psychology class, right? The fact that when you're talking with somebody at a party and you're engaged and are trying to make a connection, you might find yourself, if they're crossing your arms yourself, or if they're kind of rubbing their face like this in thought, you might find yourself doing that. Really interesting sets of phenomena. And even though they are certainly related to social psychology, we now know that those sorts of imitative feats are, these are inadvertent. They are, not on purpose usually. They're more reflexive. They actually serve a perceptual purpose. When we are imitating somebody, we actually are facilitated in our ability to perceive them. And that turns out to be a very important piece of then the social psychological puzzle that you would learn about in body language imitation in a social psychology course. All things that relate to development, and we'll be talking about perceptual development a little bit in this course. The department also offers perceptual development or cognitive development courses. And if you're very much encouraged to take those if you're interested in that sort of thing. But we will be talking about that, and we'll be talking about the basis of how parents, say, relate to their children, and then how children experience their parents on this very fundamental perceptual level. To understand then, how the kind of the social relations work between a parent and a child, and all those other, very complex things. And then we will talk about our memories, and what happens with traumatic events. I know that you're very aware that was this the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Some very powerful documentaries, by the way, have been made available on Netflix and Amazon, I think, and maybe, I don't know, HBO. Really well done. But they really bring back very strong memories, especially for somebody my age. For those memories, for those emotionally loaded memories to have those sorts of kind of power to them, something has to happen during perception, okay, of those events. Something very, kind of, salient occurs when we experience an event that has a lot of emotional weight to it, like 9/11. That affects how we're then going to remember that event the rest of our lives and how we bring it back. Perception, understanding how perception works in those instances is absolutely critical. And then, of course, all the Freudian stuff. I'm not sure why I put that picture in, but there he is. Sigmund Freud. Anything that he will be talking about, your abnormal psychology, any sort of therapeutic interest that you may have, as I know my son has, is going to have to understand what the basis of that initial informational input is, right? If we do have a, I don't know, complicated relationship with our parents, for example, that complicated relationship is enabled by the way we perceive. And I'm not talking about, how you interpret them necessarily. That's another way perception is often used, that term perception. I'm talking about the very fundamental aspect of how information of them and their actions is analyzed by the brain, the very fundamental stuff. Okay, so it is absolutely the basis of all those complex things. As I mentioned before, sometimes we are made aware of perception when we are, presented these sorts of illusions. And, I'm sure you've seen many of these very well-known illusions, where lines seem to be different lengths, even though they are actually the absolute same length, that figures can look like they have more than one kind of configuration, as this can be seen as either faces looking at each other or a vase. You've started to see, yeah, this is the sort of thing we always see on menus. We say, how many prongs does this fork have? And you count them and say 3 and say, look again. And, you'd realize that this is an impossible figure that can only be drawn, that can't really exist in a 3-dimensional world, all that sort of stuff. The same thing with this here. Recognizable faces can be made up of components that aren't real features, all these kind of cool things. By the way, this right here, I just added this. This is actually, I don't know if you can tell this from your perspective, but this is actually a photograph that has been taken in the Salvador Dali Museum in Spain. And I think it's in Spain. It's a photograph of a real room, a real 3-dimensional large room that's part of the museum exhibit, where you get up on basically a platform and look through this viewer that has this kind of hair around it. And then you look out into the room and you see a couch and these paintings here and everything. But really what your perspective is when you see it from that angle is you see a face. And again, we'll talk about face perception. It's one of my very favorite topics, and why the brain is so ready to see faces. These sorts of images, these sorts of illusions kind of remind us that perception is something that's kind of part of what goes on in our world. I mean, that is something that underlies our awareness of the world. And these illusions maybe suggest that, oh, maybe our perception is not always perfect. We'll talk about some debates concerning that in just a second, but we are made aware of perception through illusions often. Okay. Remember these? I don't know. You don't remember these. This is not something that you probably grew up with, but these are all over the internet if you're interested. We will talk about these. These are called autostereograms. Don't worry about the term now, but it's these sort of images where, especially on a computer screen, they work pretty well on a computer screen. If you focus your eyes behind the computer screen and keep that focus there and kind of shift your eye gaze to then the image itself, you start seeing kind of magic kind of shapes and objects start floating in front. It has to do with, the way your eyes are angled and the way your brain interprets that perspective, which we will talk about. But it's yet another example of how you're made aware of perception when, you end up perceiving, something different than you initially encountered. Those are kind of fun ways of doing it. I think, at least for me, one of the most common ways I'm made aware of perception, especially living in Southern California, is this type of thing. Ooh,
a roller coaster.
Oh, shoot.
Sweetie, they won't kill you in an amusement park as long.
I'm not sure you're seeing that because I don't think I clicked video. So I'm going to stop for a second and I'm going to share again. And I think we'll all enjoy this enough. Okay, so I'm going to share the sound and optimize for video. And here we go again. And I'll tell you what, yeah, let's just start watching from this.
As long as you have a dime left in your pocket.
There's nothing you can do. You're about to die.
You sound like my doctor.
My next victims. So anyway, where are you all from?
Oops. Bob, not only are you not killing us, I'm having fun.
Homie, they said to stay seated.
Oh, that's a load of... I always get sick flying backwards. Oh, hey, I can see our car. You guys haven't seen a giant steel ball, have you? You don't want to hurt me, ball.
Okay, I'm sure you've seen. Oh, maybe you haven't seen it. It's the Simpsons ride at Universal Studios. It's a blast. It's really fun. But if you've done this or you've done any of the motion simulator rides, Star Tours, there's tons. I think maybe half of the rides at Universal Studios now are like this. You know the deal, right? You're sitting in a car that or some sort of some sort of amusement park car sort of thing. And it is moving a little bit, right? It's moving up and down, side to side, a tiny bit forward and backward, but it is not on a real roller coaster. You are not falling down a hill. Maybe it's tilted this way a tiny bit. What gives you your sense of movement, your sense of orientation, is what's being presented to your visual system. It's what you're seeing in front of your eyes. And you have a very, very kind of visceral sense of your own motion when you're experiencing these sorts of things. And I think those are great examples of where we're really made aware of how perception, it works, that, wow, our visual system's kind of overriding the rest of my sense of my body, because I feel like I'm in that little, cart with the Simpsons, going up and down this roller coaster. My stomach, when I, first went down that hill, I saw my stomach kind of rose, and I really kind of felt like it. And people talk about, getting nauseous. I went on the Harry Potter ride in Universal Studios a number of years ago, right after having like 2 butter beers. And I had to close my eyes because I thought I was going to flip my butter beer. I mean, it really, the visual information on that ride was so compelling. I mean, I really felt like I was moving. It was sometimes it can be maybe overwhelming, but we are again made of perception in those instances. And I think that's one of the kind of most compelling examples of that. Oh, we saw that already. However, there's something else I will want to kind of point out here. And this is actually a little bit, we're going to touch on this a little bit in this class, but those of you that have taken the Psych 49 class I teach called Perceptual Superpowers, will remember this, of course, that there are perceptual skills that we are unaware of having, that when we are made aware, really help us, I guess, appreciate perception just that much more. And we will be doing a little of that in this class. I'd hate not to present some of these really cool demonstrations, but the other class is really where we concentrate on that. But we will talk a little bit about the fact that we hear like bats. So there I am. Okay, if you have the slides in front of you, you already know the goofy jokes, but there I am on a bat head. And you know a little bit about bats probably, that especially if they're in a cave or at night and they can see, but if they're in a situation where they can't use their vision, they use a sonar system. They send out a signal from their little bat mouths. That signal bounces off the different things that are in front of them, whether it's cave walls or trees or telephone poles or even telephone wires that are up there. That sound can bounce off and come back to them. They can use that type of kind of sonar system to determine where things are, to determine that there's a tree in front, that there's wires in front, and that there's prey in front. There's a moth in front that they can then go and catch based on the reflecting sounds that they're first emitting and then listening for. Okay. Not only true of bats, it's also true of dolphins and whales and other marine mammals, I believe, and people. And we will learn a little bit about this, as I said, but we do know that this is something that people do. Individuals who are blind sometimes can use this as their primary means of navigating the world. But as we'll learn, not only can the blind do it, the sighted do it as well if they're blindfolded and asked to do it. And there you see an old experiment of ours. My gosh, when was that? 2000, yeah, around 2000. Wow, older than you. And we are out there in front of, actually, I can see the courtyard from where I am right now. We brought our undergraduates, intro-psych students out there and told them what bats do, and then told them that people can do this too. They didn't believe us, but we said, let's try it. We put blindfolds on them and we asked them to make any sound they wanted and keep making that sound, and then walk forward until they feel like they're right in front of a wall. Say, well, how am I going to know I'm in front of the wall? Say, just do your best, and you might have a feeling you're there. And of course, we were safe with them. As you can see, there's 2 experimenters there already, and they're moving very slowly, and they have their hands out in front of them. Nobody gets hurt in these situations. But they feel silly, and most people would feel very. There were people around the courtyard, kind of walking through to go to their next class, and our subjects felt pretty silly, but they'd go, hello, testing 1, 2, hello, hello, hello. Some said, I feel silly, I feel silly, I feel silly. But they'd walk slowly to the wall, and after about 5 to 10 minutes practice, they would be able to stop right before they hit the wall. And of course, we do all the obsessive compulsive things scientists need to do. We need to, move the wall at different distances to make sure that the subjects aren't just counting their footsteps, and we do all that. And like other laboratories have shown, yes, in fact, this is something that a blindfolded, sighted person can do. They can use reflected sound in order to perceive where they are relative to some sort of approaching object, or an object that they are approaching. It's something that we've known for a long time. We'll talk a little bit about this. It will be a fun thing to talk about when we get there, and we'll be talking about some experts who do this especially well. I think you'll find very interesting. Let's see. Oh, there's my friend. That's Daniel Kish. This video isn't working. You don't need to see the video. I'll make sure it works when we get into the topic. Daniel was born blind. He grew up in Southern California, and in fact was an undergraduate at UCR, right here where I met him. and then went on to get his master's degree in rehabilitation at San Bernardino State. So he is a local celebrity. You can look him up. He's been on many TV shows, TED Talks, all that sort of thing. Great guy. The reason why he is so well known and so impressive is that despite the fact that he, has never had vision, he's never, he has prosthetic eyes, he has glass eyes. He can ride a bike. The video shows him riding a bike on a playground basketball court, kind of in between the poles that hold up the backboards and everything. He hikes through the mountains. And he teaches people, other blind people, to do the same thing. And he's able to do this through echolocation. He's gotten so good at this that this allows him to use these reflected sounds as his main means of navigation. As you'll learn, he makes a very specific type of noise that really is helpful, like that. But even though he's perfected it, and I don't recommend that this is something that you do, don't get on your bike and blindfold yourself and go riding. As you'll learn, this is something that we all can do, and our brains are actually, set up to use reflected sound very, very well. Okay. All right. This might be a good time to take a little break to see if there's any questions. So go ahead in your chat question. Let's see. Go ahead. It's hard for me to know. Okay. Did he learn the Oh, Jessica asked a very good question. Daniel Kish, if you're asking, did he learn the concept, or did it come naturally to him? The answer is it came naturally to him. You're going to learn a lot about this when we go through the topic. But Daniel, since he was a baby, his parents encouraged him to be very mobile and to not have, really to really kind of not be scared of any situation that most sighted children would not be scared of. And slowly but surely, he believes he was able to acquire this skill of using sound in order to determine where he was in a room, where he, what was around him, that sort of thing. And he never knew. I mean, he didn't really know that. He just knew that, he was making sound and it would help, but he didn't know how it was helping. He didn't know formally about echolocation until he took his undergraduate PSYC132 class, like you're taking right now. I was not the teacher. Of an old colleague of mine was teaching it at that time, but Daniel was taking the class, and the teacher said, well, this is, we know humans can echolocate. And Daniel thought, oh my gosh, I've been doing this all my life, and I can do this so well, and I never knew. And that kind of started him on this great path of learning more about it. He, did his senior thesis on echolocation. He did his master's thesis on teaching blind children echolocation, and now he has a foundation where he goes around the world and helps, children or young people that are blind learn to use the skill better. As I'm going to present, this is something that our brains all do to some degree, but you can learn to refine the skill well. And Daniel has done exactly that, and in fact has made a career out of it. Okay, what else? Maimona asks, do they make the sound themselves and just feel the sound? Yeah, it's a great, we're going to get into some detail on this. It's a great question. Do they make the sound themselves and just feel the sound bouncing off the wall? We're going to get into detail, but I will say this, one of my favorite parts of this, and I'll give you a chance to learn about it, is that it's not really experienced by Daniel or any expert or any of us as a change in sound. When I'll have you try this a little bit on your own. You just feel like there's something in front of you. And I think what's so interesting here is that your brain is using sound, but your brain in a way is kind of sparing you from having to concentrate on sound and just kind of making you have a general awareness that something in front of you. So we don't have kind of a conscious insight into the fact that we're using sound, but the brain is using sound and we are just generally aware. It feels like something's in front of them. and you'll see how that works. So it's a great question. Okay, other questions either about Daniel or about other things that we've discussed so far. Here I would normally put in one of our polling questions, so you'd have a question ready for your exam, but we haven't gone through enough material yet today, so we'll start that next week. Oh, there's another question. Brianna asks, is it similar to how you can feel someone approach you? Yeah, where it might, that's a good question. So sometimes we have a feeling that somebody is watching us, somebody is maybe approaching you, and it's kind of just a generalized feeling. You don't know how you're getting the information. I think that it is very much like that. And I think that a lot of perception is very much like that, as you'll see. I think we're doing a lot of what we do perceptually. Our brain is doing a lot of perception without our conscious awareness of it, which I think is a good thing, as I've said. Jenna asks, that makes sense. I have closed my eyes while talking to my fiance, and it feels like he's really close to me, but he's actually 3 feet away. Yeah, I've noticed that too. Yeah, when you're in the dark sometimes, and you don't know how far people are away, you kind of err on the side of them being closer than they actually are. Yeah, that's very cool. Okay, anything else on this, or should we get back to our lecture? Okay, let's get back to our lecture. Good, all cool questions. By the way, you don't have to ask questions on chat. If you want to actually speak, that's fine. Raise your hand. I think if you raise your hand, I can see your screen then, and then I'll call on you and you can speak. We'll figure out how to do this, but either way is fine. Just want to make it interactive so you come to the lectures. Okay. So we hear like bats. We also smell like dogs. I have a dog at home, so I smell like a dog a lot. But what I mean is we have certain smell skills, olfactories, the smell system. We have certain smell skills that we have long thought were just the domain of other animals, like dogs. We know that, I was just walking my dog this morning, and, he is aware of where other dogs have been much more than I am aware because of what he's smelling. Of course, right? I mean, he has that, his nose is close to the ground, and he does have more olfactory nerve cells and all that sort of thing. But as it turns out, there's been a lot of research over the last 10 years suggesting that we have skills like dogs too. And we'll be talking about some of these skills in discussion section particularly. We have, we have skills like we are able to track scents. We are able to determine the direction a scent is coming from, as you'll learn. We can recognize people, which I suggested before about recognizing your significant other, not just by looking at them, and by recognizing their voice, but also by smell sometimes. And then in discussion section, we will discuss the topic of human pheromones. The idea that we release chemical messengers from our body through our sweat glands that convey information to other people. This is a somewhat controversial idea, but as you'll see in your discussion section, that I think there is some nice support of that. But even without that, I mean, it seems we're able to do a lot more with our smell systems than we ever used to think of. And that's the sort of stuff, I mean, that's why I for those of you that have taken Psych 49, that's why I wrote a book on all these sort of topics, all these kind of perceptual skills we didn't know we had. We will be talking somewhat about those in this class, but a lot of other stuff, more kind of classic stuff on perception as well. But one of the things that I like to do is to, kind of get people to appreciate perception by kind of going through these crazy skills that they're unaware that they have. So we will touch on some of those through the quarter as well. Okay, how else can we be made aware of perception? Oh, before we get that, my notes did not print out this morning because I haven't been back in the office in a long time. My printer's broken. I will get to work, so I do not have notes for these. Sorry about that. One of the things I really, really love about perception is its what I call its scientific appeal. When you study perception, you are actually, I think, at the intersection of other sciences or other fields of inquiry. Okay. So here, I'll show you what I mean by that. So there's perception in the middle. And what I'm going to do is one of those big Venn diagrams where I'm going to show intersections between different concepts and stuff like that. Perception is going to be a field of study that is going to sit at the intersection of things like biology. So clearly, we're going to be talking about some neurophysiology in this course. Now, this is a course that absolutely requires that you have taken PSYC110, and I don't think you're allowed to register unless you're a neuroscience major, in which case you have, I'm sure, other courses. But that is the 110 course. I'm pretty sure the number is 110. Neuropsych. Where you learn about the neurophysiology of the senses. I'm assuming you know that stuff. We'll go through a little of that here, but I am not going to go through that again because what I am going to go through is stuff that is kind of conceptual beyond that. More generally, when you're a perceptual psychologist, you get to learn a lot about the biology, the neurophysiology, specifically of the brain, of the sense organs, of muscular control, and all that sort of stuff. So that's really cool. But perception also lies at the in the domain of physics, right? So in order to understand how the neurophysiology works, in order to understand how the brain works, how the senses work, we need to understand the information that is available to the senses. We need to understand something about how light works. We need to understand something about how sound works, how mechanics works when the mechanics is bearing on our skin when we feel an object, right? That's all physics. And there's some really, really fascinating stuff about the physics that underlies perception that we will go through this quarter that I think you probably wouldn't normally think of as physics. Beyond that, we're going to look towards physics as perceptual psychologists this quarter. We're going to look towards physics for strategies that we might want to borrow for understanding perceptual and maybe more generally psychological phenomena. So you'll see within, probably next week we'll get to this, you'll see a theory of perception that borrows heavily from what we know about magnetic and electrical fields. What does that have to do? I mean, that kind of sounds, you have to be very careful when you talk like that, not to sound like, some sort of kind of, groovy kind of, Southern California thing, where talking about auras and stuff like that. It's interesting. I'm perfectly happy with you thinking about that stuff, but we're going to be talking about science here, and we're going to be talking about evidence-based understanding of these phenomena. But even then, you can sometimes find evidence that in some ways the brain acts not unlike a magnetic and electrical field. So we're going to be borrowing then from physics. So not only will the physics be useful when we discuss, the information, the light, the sound that gets into our brains, it's also going to be useful for us to kind of borrow some of the conceptual ideas that field has provided. Okay, and then finally, we'll certainly be starting this on Tuesday. We will be talking about how perception intersects philosophy. And you'll see, I mean, you probably didn't think you'd be taking a philosophy course or be learning very much philosophy in a psychology course, especially in a perceptual psychology course. But in fact, you will be. I think that some of the most interesting things we'll be talking about come in the beginning of the quarter, where you're going to realize that how we ask questions about perception and, dare I say, all of psychology is going to depend on some of the philosophical assumptions we make about the mind, about our consciousness, and about how we relate to the world. Now, That kind of sounds really abstract, and it is. But you're going to see that how we answer those big, deep, kind of metaphysical almost questions, those philosophical questions, is going to guide our manner of asking more specific questions about how the visual system works, how the auditory system works, and how the brain works in general. So perception is cool at lying at the intersection of all these different sorts of fields of inquiry, we'll say, right? It's not all science because philosophy is not quite science, but fields of inquiry. That perception is going to lie at the intersection of biology, physics, and philosophy. Okay, let me see something here. I am going to end early today because there's a number of reasons. First, it's your first class back since the summer. I want to give you a little break, but also because I have to run downstairs. I have a couple of technical things I have to do for the first class. So let's end here today. This will be the only time we're ending early, trust me. But I'll give you a little break here. Let me just quickly see if there's any last minute chat questions for me. Someone says, yeah, Psych 110 can be very difficult course. So if and when you do study, okay, correct. Oh, people are asking about Psych 110. Oh my gosh, the only prerequisites for this course are 1, 2, 11, and 12. That, I guess, has changed. Okay. That's okay. All right, we'll talk about that fact next class. Anyway, have a good weekend, and we'll see you on Tuesday.